I used to think I would die in an accident, from illness, or simply from old age, but not by the hands of the one who vowed to protect me. I didn't die in a war or a natural disaster. I passed quietly in my kitchen after sipping a morning cup of tea laced with something I never saw coming. Death didn't arrive in a burst of blood or the flash of a knife. It came slowly, through silence stretched over years, through words laced with resentment, through eyes that stopped seeing me, and all the times I convinced myself it was just a phase. Have you ever wondered why a woman stays? Why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't she scream? I used to ask myself the same thing. But when you are being suffocated day after day, you don't realize you're dying. You think this is what normal feels like. My name is Marin Calloway. I was once a preschool teacher, the woman who always had a warm smile and a purse full of candy for her students. But behind my front door was a different world, a world where laughter was twisted into a mask, hiding a loneliness so deep it almost swallowed me whole. I got married at 26, believing I had found love. What I found was a lesson no one ever prepared me for. He didn't hit me in the beginning. He just started with little things, how I spoke, how I wore my hair. Then he took my friends, then my job, and finally he took me. Do you know what it feels like to be alive but no longer yourself? Like having your voice stolen in a crowded room, screaming, but no one hears you. That's how I lived for 6 years. And for 6 years, every morning, I asked myself, is today the last day? Do I deserve this pain? Does anyone truly see me? But I never imagined that the real last day would come during a perfectly ordinary morning when I took a sip of tea and felt the world begin to tilt. My body didn't react like it was poisoned. It felt more like I was slipping out of reality. And in that moment, when everything went dark, I wasn't afraid. I just felt empty. So, if you had one last moment of awareness, who would you think of? What would you wish for? And if you found out that death is just a doorway into the full truth of your life, would you dare open it? I'm going to take you through that doorway with me, to the place where I saw the 2 women I had lost, the ones my soul had always been calling for. And there, I was shown something no one had ever taught me before, that the soul never dies. It is always learning. Have you ever wondered if you could meet your loved ones again? What would you say? I didn't see the light right away. There was no tunnel, no angelic music, just an endless emptiness so vast I couldn't tell whether I was drifting through it or dissolving into it. I had no body, yet I still existed, like a stream of awareness floating between 2 layers of reality. And then, slowly, from that emptiness, a soft golden light began to spread. It wasn't blinding, but it was so warm that I wept without tears. The emotions came rushing in like a broken dam, not from fear, but because, for the first time, I felt truly loved without condition. No one was asking me to be perfect. No one needed me to smile to hide the pain. I was simply allowed to be myself. Then, within that light, 2 figures appeared. They didn't have to introduce themselves. I knew exactly who they were. My mother, my sister. They had left me long ago, so long ago that I had questioned whether they had ever truly existed. But now they were here. No wrinkles, no illness, only 2 souls radiating a kind of energy no earthly words could touch. My mother didn't speak with words. She held me. And in that embrace, I heard the whole universe whisper, "You've endured enough." My sister smiled at me, the kind of smile that made it feel like we had never been apart. And I realized then that those we love don't disappear when they die. They simply move into the light and wait for us to remember they're still there, every single day. I wanted to ask them 100 questions. I wanted to hold on to them, to apologize for forgetting who I was. But then another presence emerged. It didn't have a form, but I could feel its wisdom and peace surrounding me. A being of pure light and love, dissolving every fear I had ever known the moment it appeared. I understood it was the Holy Spirit. There was no need to explain. The soul recognizes truth without needing proof. And the Spirit didn't tell me I had to return. Instead, it placed a single question deep within me. Do you want to keep learning? I didn't understand at first, not until I saw my entire life laid out before me. Every scene, every feeling, every moment I had missed by not living fully from the heart. And I began to understand that death isn't an ending, it's a mirror, one that reflects the soul with a clarity we rarely see in life. So, if you were shown your entire life in a single glance, would you feel pride or pain? And if you were given the chance to live again, would you dare to live differently? In the next part, I'll share what made me choose to return, not because I feared death, but because I remembered a mission I once vowed to fulfill, a promise made between souls. Have you ever wondered if you too made a vow before you were born? I don't know how long I stood there, surrounded by the souls who loved me, and that radiant light that filled every hollow space inside my being. There was no time, only awareness. Each moment stretched into infinity, yet passed in the blink of an eye. And in that stillness, I saw the different versions of myself. Marin at 7, when I lost my mother in a car crash. Marin at 13, swallowing tears to be the strong one for my sister. Marin at 26, walking into a wedding without truly knowing who I was. I didn't just remember these moments, I felt them. I relived the pain, the fear, the small forgotten seconds I once dismissed as unimportant. A hug, a glance, a time I said yes when I meant no. And I realized every choice has a voice, even silence. I had been silent for so long, afraid of losing love, afraid of losing stability, afraid of being seen as the wife who failed. But now, standing in the raw truth of my soul, I saw I didn't come to this earth to please anyone. I came to live in alignment with the light within me. And every time I let fear win, I gave up a piece of that light. At that moment, my mother came closer. She didn't speak with words, but through pure vibration. She sent me one truth. You've carried enough pain. You can forgive, or you can carry this weight into another life. My sister took my hand and smiled. She didn't blame me for leaving her. On the contrary, she thanked me for living on in her place. I wept not from regret, but from the grace of being understood, seen, and accepted. For many years, I lived trying to be loved, but only now do I finally understand what it means to be loved unconditionally. I looked again toward the Holy Presence. It did not force me to return, but the light within it spoke in a way that bypassed words. The truth you have just received, if you bring it back into the world, it will not only heal you, it will become a lifeline for other souls who are still asleep as you once were. I did not know if I was strong enough to return to that world, but I knew one thing. If I chose not to go back, I would forever carry an unanswered question. What had I promised before I was born, and have I lived that promise to its fullness? In the next part, I will share what happened in the exact moment I stepped out of that light and returned to my frail body lying on a hospital bed, where life and death were separated by the smallest breath. I'll tell you what I saw the moment I opened my eyes. It was not the nurse. It was not the hospital lights. It was a sign, a quiet but clear signal that I had returned with a completely new mission. Do you believe that once a soul has seen the truth, it could ever live the same way again? I do not remember the exact moment my soul returned to my body. There was no thunderous sound, no burst of light pulling me back, only a sensation of heaviness, a physical weight, as if gravity itself were anchoring me once again to this world. And in that moment, I understood that the decision had been made. I had chosen to come back. Not because I feared death, but because I wanted to truly live. The first thing I felt when I opened my eyes was not the brightness of the hospital lights. It was crying. Not from me, but from somewhere deep inside, like a part of my soul still protesting the return to old pain. But then I felt a hand holding mine. A nurse? No, it was my hand. I held my hand tightly, as if to remind myself, Marin, from this moment forward, you will never let go of yourself again. My body was too weak to speak. The doctor said my survival was a miracle, that had I arrived just a few minutes later, recovery would have been impossible. But they had no idea where I had been. They did not see how I had died or how I had returned. They did not know what I had witnessed. But I knew. And the memory was so vivid that even the smallest dream, the flicker of light, or a faint sound would bring it all rushing back. So, how do you live in this world after tasting the other? How do you carry on normal conversations when your mind still echoes with the sound of truth? How do you forgive the one who tried to kill you when you now understand that you can either carry hatred or leave it behind and move forward? I began to write, a little more each day. I did not write to tell a story. I wrote so I would not forget. I recorded the journey of my soul in the rawest language I could find, because there is no vocabulary refined enough to describe what it feels like to be embraced by lost love or touched by a forgiveness that never spoke your name before. I did not return to my old home. I did not see the man who poisoned me. I chose to disappear for a while, not to hide, but to be reborn. I stayed with an old friend in a small room that overlooked a lake. Each morning, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, this time no longer laced with fear, and looked out at the still surface of the lake, calm like a mirror. I would ask myself, if my soul were watching me from the other side, would she be proud of the woman I was becoming? And if not, what must I do to live in alignment with this second chance I had been given? In the next part, I will share the first changes I made when I began to live my life again, not as the old Marin, but as a soul that had chosen to awaken. Have you ever wondered if true life only begins after you have died once? Those first days back in my body felt like learning how to live all over again. Not just learning how to walk, eat, or breathe, but learning how to believe that I was worthy of life. I had spent years as a shadow, doing what others expected, staying silent when I should have screamed, smiling when all I wanted was to break down. Now, every morning when sunlight streamed through the window, I saw more than light. I saw a message from the Holy Spirit saying, "You are still here because you chose to stay." And so, I lived each day as a gift. I began with the smallest things, walking under trees, listening to the wind, cooking a meal just to thank my body for healing, and seeing others through a different lens. I no longer looked at people to judge them. I looked at them to connect, because I understood that everyone is carrying an invisible battle inside, just as I once did. One morning at a cafe, I saw an unfamiliar woman with swollen eyes from crying. I didn't ask what had happened. I simply held her hand and said a sentence I once heard on the other side. "It's okay. Your soul is still learning." She cried even more, but something in her eyes softened. I began to realize that I had not returned to live as I used to. I came back to be a place where someone else's soul might brush against the truth. I didn't need to explain everything that had happened. I only needed to be present as living proof that resurrection is real. But have you ever asked yourself, what does resurrection truly mean? Is it surviving an illness? Or is it learning how to live again with your heart wide open? Is it forgiving the one who hurt you, or forgiving yourself for staying in pain for too long? In that small room by the lake, I once wrote a single line on the mirror, "I am coming back to life." And every time I read it, I remembered that light, my mother, my sister, and the Holy Spirit. They were no longer here, but I carried them in every choice I made. And every choice, no matter how small, became a declaration of the soul. I will tell you about the moment I decided not just to live again, but to live with purpose. I stepped out of the shadows, not to forget the past, but to turn it into a light for someone else. Have you ever wondered if maybe you too were sent back for a reason greater than anything you've imagined? I used to think that you had to have power, money, or fame to change someone else's life. But once you've died and come back, you realize that sometimes all it takes is the right words at the right moment, a look that holds no judgment, or even a silence full of understanding to pull someone back from despair. I began visiting women's shelters, not to talk about my tragedy, but to listen to theirs. I didn't give advice, I simply sat there, present, as living proof that resurrection is real. Many times, people asked me why I didn't go to the police, why I never sued the man who poisoned me. I used to ask myself the same question. There were nights I dreamed of revenge, imagined a courtroom, a sentence, a moment of justice. But then I remembered what my mother told me in the light. You can carry your hatred with you, or you can leave it here and move on in peace. I didn't forgive him to set him free. I forgave him to set myself free. I didn't want to carry my soul through this life and into another one, still gripping an old story. I wrote a letter, but never mailed it. In it, I said I chose to keep living, not because you weren't cruel enough, but because I was brave enough not to let you be the reason the rest of my life had no light. So let me ask you this. Are you living for someone who once hurt you? Are you still letting them hold the reins to a life your soul fought so hard to return to? I returned to teaching, but this time I didn't teach children about letters or numbers. I taught them about emotions, about listening to their hearts. I told gentle stories about love, kindness, and sometimes even death. Not to frighten them, but to help them understand that every moment is a chance to live more fully. I started holding small gatherings, once a week. Sometimes only 3 people came. Other times the room was filled to the edges. But numbers didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that when I looked into their eyes, I saw myself from years ago. And I told them the one thing no one ever told me. You are not wrong for enduring, but you will be wrong if you keep staying silent while your soul is screaming to live. In the next part, I'll tell you about a strange letter I received. It came from a woman I had never met, yet she described exactly what I had gone through. And from that moment on, I understood something. The awakening of a soul is never just a personal journey. It is a thread in a sacred design you never even knew you were part of. So, if your soul is awakening, are you ready to carry that light into someone else's darkness? That afternoon, as I was packing up my notebooks after a small gathering at the town library, a staff member handed me an envelope with no return address. The paper was slightly yellowed, the handwriting slanted and soft, but carried the weight of someone who had lived through much. I don't know why, but my heart began pounding as if I were about to receive something profoundly important. I opened the letter. The first line read, "I too have died once, just like you." I had never seen those words before, yet they felt like they had echoed inside me for years. I kept reading. Each word, each paragraph peeled back layers of my soul I thought no one else could understand. The woman in the letter shared how she had fallen into a deep coma after an accident, where she met her late mother and was given a message. Your soul is not alone in this awakening. She described a space almost identical to the one I had visited, the same feeling of being as light as air, yet as heavy as truth. She wrote that ever since waking up, she had felt an urge to find someone else who had crossed through death and returned, because she believed those who came back were all connected by an invisible thread. She did not know my name. She had only heard from a friend about a woman with eyes that had seen the truth, and she believed it was me. I sat still, speechless. How could someone describe exactly the feelings I thought were mine alone? How could a person I had never met know that I had felt alone in the light, carrying a truth too vast to share with the world? And then it hit me. This wasn't a coincidence. This was an answer. A circle that had once closed was now slowly opening. Maybe in that realm, she and I had made a pact, that if we both came back, we would find each other. Maybe the soul makes promises that transcend language and time. I wrote her back, not to tell my story, but to say, I believe you, and I've been waiting for a letter like this. From that day on, I began to understand that my mission was not just to tell a story. It was to connect, to shine light for others whose souls were awakening but didn't yet know what was happening, to be a mirror where they could see they weren't alone. So let me ask you, have you ever met someone who felt strangely familiar, as if you'd known them for lifetimes? Do you believe that a single touch, a glance, or a letter could be a signal from a promise made long before birth? In the next part, I'll share the story of a small community I began to build, made up of people who had all brushed up against death, and why, whenever we sit together, even silence becomes a sacred language. Have you ever wondered if those who have returned from death might be looking for one another? From that one letter, I began to believe there were more people like me than I ever imagined. No one is truly alone in a near-death journey. They may just be waiting for the courage to speak. I created a small group on social media and named it Those Who Returned. At first, there were 5 of us, then 10, then 30. Each person carried a story they thought could never be told. A man who drowned saw his son who had passed away. A mother who woke up after heart surgery and swore she felt an angel holding her hand. A 17-year-old girl who slipped into a coma after an accident and came back saying her soul had flown across a field bathed in light. We didn't debate religion. We didn't argue about what was right or wrong. We just shared. And we listened. Once a week, we met, sometimes online, sometimes in a small house I had rented on the edge of town. There were days we simply sat in silence, hands held, eyes closed. On other days, we read poetry. Some nights we wept quietly as someone shared the moment they were forced to return, even when their soul begged to stay. And that was when I began to realize something profound. Life after a near-death experience is not a reward. It is a responsibility. When you have seen the light, you can no longer pretend you haven't. When you have felt what unconditional love truly is, you can no longer love halfway. I began teaching people how to listen to their soul, not with their minds, but through stillness. I showed them that forgiveness does not begin with others. It begins with ourselves for staying in the darkness for so long. I started writing a book, not for fame, but to leave something behind for those who still lacked the words to tell their own stories. And strangely, when I began to live truthfully, the universe began to arrange things for me. A small publishing house reached out. A nonprofit invited me to speak with women healing from abuse. A television network offered an interview. I declined most of them, because I knew the point was not to speak to many, but to touch the soul of the one who truly needed to hear. So let me ask you this. If you were invited today to tell the story of your life, would you speak as someone who merely survived, or as someone who has truly lived? Would you tell your story to be pitied, or to awaken the light within another? Every week I receive dozens of letters, not from people I know, but from weary souls, walking through a darkness they're not sure has an end. One woman in her 50s wrote to me, "My husband died of cancer, my son is an addict, and I don't know what I'm still living for. Marin, was the death you experienced more terrifying than the loneliness I carry now?" I held that letter and cried, not out of sorrow, but because I had once written a nearly identical letter to myself, silently, in my mind. I wrote back, "No, death is not scarier than living without knowing who you are. But if you are asking that question, it means your soul is trying to live, not trying to die. And that is where hope begins." A 17-year-old boy once wrote to me, "Miss Marin, if I feel like an alien in my own family, does that mean there's something wrong with me?" I held that letter like I was holding the child I used to be. And I wrote back, "No, sweetheart, it might just mean you're the only one still awake in a house that's fallen asleep. And being awake is always lonely at first. But one day you'll meet others like you, and they'll call you home." Someone else asked me, "How do you know you're not imagining all of this?" And I simply wrote, "Because the truth doesn't excite you, it quiets you. And if you feel quiet inside, you are very close to the most real part of yourself." I am not an expert. I don't have all the answers, but I carry a light that I brought back from the other side. And if even one ray of that light can slip through the cracks in someone's darkness, then my return to life was worth every breath. The day I decided to return to my old house, it rained. Just a light rain, not enough to soak through my coat, but enough to make it feel like even the sky had slowed down for this moment. I stood at the familiar wooden gate, hand resting on the handle I had once gripped so tightly every time I came home, full of hesitation. The house hadn't changed much. The same gray bricks, the small window with white curtains. But I knew the thing that truly needed to change was not the house, it was me. I didn't come to reclaim anything. I didn't come face to face with someone from the past. I came to step into the place that once swallowed my voice and say to it, "I am not afraid of you anymore." I opened the door and stepped inside. No one was there. I had asked the new owner for permission just to stand there for a few minutes. No sound, except for the soft drip of rain from the roof. I walked through the living room, where I used to cry silently in that old chair, past the kitchen, where I took the last sip of tea in my old life. Then I stopped in what had once been the bedroom, not to remember, but to release. I closed my eyes, placed a hand over my chest, and whispered, "Marin, you've come home, but you are no longer who you were." I opened my eyes, and for the first time, I no longer found the room frightening. It was just a place, and I was just someone who had walked out of it, no longer carrying fear, but carrying light. I left a note on the table that read, "Thank you for the lessons. I'm moving on now." Then I walked outside. The rain had stopped. The sky was still gray, but inside me, it was clear, as if I had just opened a door no one else could see. I knew that in that moment, the loop was closed. I no longer needed to look back. I no longer needed to ask whether I was right or wrong. I no longer needed to prove to anyone that I was worthy, because my soul already knew. So let me ask you, are you still carrying an old room in your heart, one you haven't dared to return to? Are you holding on to a story you haven't told because you fear it will break you all over again? In the next part, I'll share with you what no one tells you after you come back to life, the loneliness that comes from seeing the world with eyes that have changed, and how to turn that loneliness into power instead of pain. Have you ever come back to life, only to feel like a stranger in the world you once called home? No one told me that the hardest part of coming back to life wouldn't be healing my body, but trying to rejoin a world that hadn't changed. The old world kept spinning. People still argued over the little things, still chased borrowed dreams, ran after what they thought mattered. And there I was, standing among them like someone speaking a language no one else could understand. Have you ever felt like you were still living among people, eating with them, working beside them, but quietly standing on the other side of a glass wall? They talk, they laugh, but all you hear is a distant echo from another place. Not because you think you're better, but because you've seen the truth. And that truth separates you. I tried to do the normal things, grocery shopping, ordering coffee, attending meetings. But in the back of my mind, I kept hearing the voice from the light whispering, "Your soul didn't come here to fit in, it came to awaken." I began to feel lonely, not for people, but for connection. There were nights I cried, just longing for a conversation where I didn't have to pretend. A look that said, "I see you," without needing to explain anything. Someone who could sit in silence and still hear what my soul was trying to say. But then I realized that was the lesson. When your soul awakens, you will feel as lonely as a sprout pushing up through the dirt. But if you stay rooted, others will see you and start to rise too. I stopped waiting to be loved. I chose to live as if love were flowing through me. And slowly, I began meeting others who had walked through death's door. They came from different places, with different stories, but shared the same eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen the truth. We didn't have to say much. Just being near one another was enough to know we weren't wrong, we weren't crazy, we weren't alone. I started to believe that loneliness after awakening isn't a sign you've gone the wrong way. It's proof that you're on the right one. So, if today you feel out of place in this world, maybe that's because your soul is remembering where it truly belongs. And if you've ever died and come back, would you dare to live differently? In the next part, I'll share with you the greatest thing I learned from dying, that we didn't come here to be perfect, but to be real. And only in that truth can the soul be free. Are you ready to hear the final message I received from the other side? I used to think death was the end, but now I know it's only a pause in the music of the soul, a moment of silence so you can finally hear the voice within. After everything, what truly matters is not how long you live, but how deeply you live. In death, I was reminded that my soul had chosen all of it, the pain, the love, even the mistakes. Not to be punished, but to learn. And when I came back, I realized the greatest lesson wasn't about living well. It was about living truthfully. Truth with the pain, truth to the dreams, truthful with the voice inside you that you've silenced for too long out of fear of rejection. I used to be the woman who lived to please others, to avoid conflict, to never disappoint. But now I choose to live as a soul that remembers it's not immortal, and that's what makes every moment sacred. I eat a simple meal as if I'm touching the divine. I watch a sunset as if I'm looking back into the world beyond. I love not because someone completes me, but because I want to shine beside them. I'm not perfect. I still have tired days, but I no longer pretend. I no longer abandon my soul just to be accepted. I choose truth. And truth, sometimes, is the bravest act you can offer in a world addicted to pretending. So, are you living truthfully, or just existing like a shadow on the edge of your own life? If you've ever heard that whisper that you didn't come here just to survive, but to awaken, don't ignore it. That whisper is your soul reaching through the fear, calling you into truth. And if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're waking up. And waking up is never easy, but it's the only thing that's truly worth it. My name is Marin Calloway. I died. I came back. And I choose to live as a soul who remembers who she is. Now it's your turn. Do you dare to remember who you are?